Welcome to this video on the Joranalogue Filter 8, multimode filter and 8-phase output oscillator. There's a ton of things this can do, but let's check out some previews of what's to come. Now, Joranalogue state on their website and in the manual that this represents the cutting edge in modular analog voltage-controlled filter design. It offers more possibilities and higher fidelity in 12 HP than ever before. Now, we get a coarse and a fine tune for the cutoff. Fine is super useful because this will oscillate as an LFO or a VCO. These outputs, let's just make this oscillate. You can see when it's an LFO that these phases are changing. We've got 4-pole low pass, 1, 2, 3 and 4 poles representing 6 dB per octave, 12 dB, 18 dB and 24 dB per octave low pass slopes. There's a 1-pole high pass, a unique band and notch, a phase shifted out and a 4-pole band pass. We get 2 inputs. There's a ping input, a hold input, which if you watch these LEDs, we'll just freeze that core. We can do some audio rate sync type effects in there. We can compensate the gain differences when these are resonating or self-oscillating. There's volt per octave tracking over 5 octaves, exponential FM with a bipolar attenuverter, resonance mod, and again an attenuverter for the mod, linear FM, which is great for glassy musical FM overtones, either at audio rates when this is being a filter or when it's an oscillator, bringing in those FM tones and bell-like tones over the sine wave that it will produce. We can block out DC signals in the linear FM. There's the low and high operating modes, either for audio or LFO. It can be a slew limiter. There's a ton of potential uses. The manual's great. I'm aware I'm talking very fast to get through all this because there's a lot of features to get through. Timing indexes below. Please skip around to your heart's content. Check out the patches, the notes that I've made, skip in, watch the whole thing, however you want to absorb the content. There is all the links below and the timing links if you just want to hear some acid patching or some slewing or what it pings like. It serves as a manual you can reference with those timing links. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So let's start by checking out the sound of the filter, the key thing that you're probably here for. Have a saw wave coming in, and if I open this filter, you can see on data, we've got this saw wave. Simple oscillator to the sides, simple saw. Now let's check out each of the outputs with no resonance. First, the 1-pole 6 dB per octave low pass. That's the 2-pole low pass. 3-pole or 18 dB per octave, and 4-pole or 24 dB per octave. Now saying the cutoff in the middle, I'll skip back through them and I'll edit this in the video so it quickly moves from one to the other, and you can hear this difference in the way it responds in the fall off per octave, be it the 1-pole 6 dB, the 2-pole 12, the 3-pole 18 or the 4-pole 24 dB. So here we go. Let's hear them all with resonance. More resonance. quite different on that 2-pole. And on that 1-pole, that res feels a bit croakier. Now let's check out the other responses. High pass, and this is a 1-pole high pass. Gorgeously smooth with no res. The band and notch that's quite unique in its response. Phase shifted out. And the 4-pole bandpass. So we've got two inputs, and these simply unity mixed together. If I was to add a square wave in, notice the level jump, but it also drives the filter. So I'm going to plug in a square wave and take the cable in and out so you can see and hear that difference. Now, of course, the wave shape's different. It's now a mix of a saw wave and a square wave, but you can hear that drive into the filter. Let's just hear those filters being driven by two inputs. 1-pole low pass. Two-pole low pass. Even deeper, the 3-pole low pass. Four-pole low pass. Big, fat, deep bass. Let's go back the other way, band pass. Phase shifted out. The band and notch blend. And the high pass. So that's the sound of these filters, being driven by two waves or a single wave with varying resonances. Let's start animating it and get into some other patches. So now we've heard all the different modes and the sweeps and gone through the features, let's animate a patch and see what we get. Have a square wave coming from this through zero oscillator from Danny Sound. It's the square wave there on data. This is coming out into filter 8. We're coming out of the 1-pole output as it stands. And the bottom trace is the filter's output. And I have a gate pattern triggering an envelope. Let's patch this into exponential FM. And let's just compare those different pole low pass outputs. 1 pole, 2. Notice a very quick drop in the top end perception without changing the settings. 3-pole, deeper again, more top end reduction. And even more on that 4-pole. So next thing I'm going to add is a pitch sequence to the volt per octave. Here that is without the envelope. Adding the envelope. Now it gives it a little bit of a pattern, a bit more of a dynamic, more musical sequence type sound to it. I'm going to add a sequence to resonance. And because these are attenuators for our modulation inputs, I could start with high res and invert that sequence. Let's try the 4-pole out. And the 1-pole retains a lot more of that buzz of the square wave at the input. So in this example, I just wanted to show some quite bulbous, detuned, kind of fat, rich bass sounds. Now there's quite a bit of modulation going on. I'm going to pull out the sequencing and we'll go through everything that's going on. So this is potentially hard to see it all in detail, but the blue trace on data is just a saw wave. That's from this through zero oscillator. Simple saw wave. It's going out into a wave animator, into filter 8, and the 2-pole out is this green and fuzzy line that you can see. On the scope. The modulation that I had was first an envelope into the volt per octave. Now I put it in there because I wanted the attenuator and the depth of modulation on the exponential FM for something else. Just playing with the K time on my envelope. Now removing that for a second, I took a sequence into the exponential FM, and here it is with normal positive modulation. But I wanted this to be more open and to attenuate the sequence. I just like the pattern it gives from that particular sequence. Mix that with the envelope. It's more dynamic, way more life to it. Now the next thing was to take an accent pattern, and this is literally just a gate signal, and modulate resonance. So if I put this up positively, you can hear resonance kind of turning on and off with this gate pattern. Slightly different to the pattern playing the envelope, but very similar. Now it's a little bit too frequent for my liking, so I turned up the resonance and attenuated this gate pattern. So I've still got little spikes of resonance as little accents, but they're not as frequent. Just get my pitch back into the oscillator. It's a nice dynamic filtering over quite bulbous wave animated bass. But if I take down some of this wave animation, which is nothing to do with the filter, I should say, still got this great dynamic, lively filter modulation. So here we'll take a look at audio rate modulation and also using the hold input, which freezes the core of the filter as an audio rate effect as well, which is going to sound a bit like oscillator sync. So first, let's hear what we've got coming in. Again, this is a saw wave. The yellow trace is our modulation, currently not plugged in. The blue trace on data is the 2-pole low pass output from the filter 8. And we'll try this over a couple of the outputs, but let's stick with this 2-pole low pass to start with. Now plugging in my audio rate modulation, I'm first going to drop its level or frequency right down to be an LFO, so we can hear the effect. It's much more common to hear filters modulated this way. It's quite a fast LFO, but you get the idea. Now taking the rate of modulation up, the depth is up full. We get these great formant-like, growly, kind of mid-rich type overtones. Resonance will make this far more pronounced. can use the linear input for a much softer effect. You can hear that with and without. Gives a kind of croakiness, very throaty kind of resonance. We're going to stick exponential for that deeper. Now we can also modulate the hold. Here it is on its own, a sweep without it, and then a sweep with it. Very similar overtone. Now again, resonance will be more pronounced. Lots of great vocal-like overtones. So there's lots of potential colours and that great croaky vocal, very throat and glottal like modulation you get from audio rate over cutoff. So here we'll take a look at using feedback to drive the filter and create new clipped wave shapes and more kind of crazy non-linear responses in the resonance. Now, I'll just give you a little warning that this is going to get loud. Some of these are going to really boost out quite a bit of top end with the resonance and quite a lot more level than some of the others. I don't process any of the modular audio in my demos. It's all raw, so you get the truest, most honest demo I can give. So just be careful, especially in headphones. Now, here's a sweep without any kind of feedback. There's a bit of resonance. And that's it. Now I'm going to plug a cable in to the 3-pole output. We're currently listening to the 4-pole output. Now I'm going to play with the cutoff and also the level of an external VCA controlling this signal. So this is coming out of the 3-pole out to a VCA and I'm coming back in to my extra audio input because there's the 2 audio ins. So I'll sweep around and play with that VCA level and let you hear what happens. Like I said, watch out because it does kick out and scream a bit. And there's just a nice clipped, fat, driven filter. Without the feedback signal, and with. A lot more weight. Now if I boost this signal even further, as you hear I did, because this VCA I've got has a lot of amplification. That's where it gets a bit bonkers. Now let's try the bandpass output. So same thing, we're listening to the 4-pole low pass, no signal, here's a sweep again, totally clean. Here's adding in the bandpass for feedback. So without any resonance, this is down. That feedback's adding a lot. Let's try the phase shifted out. And this almost has like a Casio CZ phase distortion thing going on. It's really nice. Let's try the high pass. Again, no signal to start with. Here's a clean sweep. So using feedback to drive, saturate, clip, wave shape, make it bonkers and screaming, or give it some resonance, or that kind of CZ, Casio's way of doing the DX phase modulation thing, kind of bass sweeps. There's a lot to be explored, and get that into some sequences and some other modulation, and you've a ton of fun exploring the potential with the filter. So here we've got the phase shifted output, and I'm currently modulating exponential FM with an LFO, the rate of which you can see on this oscillator next to it. There's some drums and a droning wave all mixed together into the input, and let's listen to it. It sounds gorgeous. Now moving over to the low pass out, no modulation, that's my input. Go phase shifted out and add modulation again. Turn up the rate a bit. Bit of res. Now I'm going to modulate resonance separately with a faster LFO. And this is audio rate modulation of the resonance amount. Adding that audio rate, croaky, throat-like formant sound to this phase shifting. And it's a great rich phaser-like tone. So I just thought we'd take a little break and dive into some acid. Now the TB303 was a 3-pole 18 dB per octave low pass. So we've come out of the 3-pole output, have a saw wave, single saw from an oscillator, that's the green trace on data, going back into filter 8. I've got an envelope to the exponential FM, and that's it. Let's just have a quick little play around and a little acid line break between these other more in-depth patches. So some of you may have heard of this idea of pinging filters. Now, with other filters, we would get their resonance right below the point of oscillation, and you'd fire a short trigger into the audio input. This excites this near oscillating filter and creates a percussive little ping. Now, let's take one of the outputs, and which doesn't really matter, and turn up the resonance, and this will self-oscillate. Its pitch is controlled by coarse and fine tune, as you would expect, and it becomes an 8-phase output VCO or LFO, both of which we will look at later in the video. But if we ping this with resonance down, it's just like a click. But when we actually get the resonance just before oscillation, we get these glorious little pinged percussive sounds. And resonance is like the decay control for the excitement and the kind of character of the sound. So you could sequence the resonance. And create a nice dynamic moving tone. We could get a volt per octave signal in. And it almost sounds like, certainly in headphones, that there's a little kind of noisy reverb in there. It's got a great unique little character that's different from just putting, say, sines into VCAs. Great for percussion, great for kind of secondary kicks against a fatter kick drum. Just a nice way to work. But let's explore the linear FM. First, take out the pitch. I'm going to AC couple this to remove any DC offset. get that volt per octave signal back into both my modulating oscillator now and to filter 8. And there's lots of great kind of phase distortion, phase modulation, DXE, digital FM type tones. So that's linear FM over a pinged filter. So here we'll take a look at filter 8 as an 8-phase oscillator. Now we're coming out of the one-pole low pass, and if I turn resonance up full, we'll get oscillation, and this is a deep sine wave. We get coarse and fine tune to tune it. Fine tune is obviously a useful addition when it's been an oscillator, not as common on many filter designs, it's just a coarse cut-off control. And these are all out of phase of each other. 45-degree phase, 90, and so on. So let's check out the 2-pole low pass, and that's the blue trace on data. The 3-pole low pass is the pink trace, which is a little bit harder to see, and the 4-pole yellow. So we can see these out of phase signs. Now, we've got this compensation switch which adjusts the gain staging of these oscillating filter outputs, because they all are at different amplitudes, they're at different levels, and this will just bump them all up. Now if I move these to be different outs, you can see we get different phases, and if I plug a pitch sequence in, volt per octave tracking works great, look 5 octaves or above. Let's patch in some linear FM. Really great, clean, glassy, harmonious FM tones. But we can also wave shape this by patching feedback. So let's remove these extra outs. And let's just try patching some of these back on themselves. The manual outlines how to get a almost saw wave tone from this, how to get the cleanest saw-like tone. So I'm going to come back out into exponential FM. Turn that up. Let's try some of the other outs. And that's a pretty damn clean saw. Again, let's sequence it. There's all sorts of different log and exponential curved saw-like waves. So here we've got resonance up full, so this oscillates, and I'm in the low mode, creating 8 LFOs. Now you can see these all on Modax data. And you can see on the LEDs how this shifts in phase between the outputs. I have 4 sounds going into a reverb. Here's the first. Here's the second. Third. And fourth. If I just play, say, second and fourth. First and third. When they're all in together, it kind of cascades across all of the sounds. I could swap the outs. We could, of course, volt per octave control or frequency modulate with linear or exponential responses to control the rate, but we can still modulate the shape by patching feedback on itself. So if I patch back in to the exponential FM, let's turn the rate up. Got a downward saw-like tone. Let's try another. A kind of exponential rising ramp. Downward log type saw. So there's lots of potential. That hold is really useful to freeze the core of this circuit as well. and that can be done under modulation. Great for halting and pausing what's going on with these LFOs. So here we have a sequence, just pitch CV coming into the main input into filter 8, coming out of the one pole output to the volt per octave in on my oscillator. And we're just listening to a triangle wave. No modulation, no VCA, no other control. Now, because this is working at sub-audio rates, we can turn down the cutoff, which becomes a slew rate. So let's listen to this sequence, listen how it's stepping. Now listen to how it curves, it's a lag or a portamento or a glide that we'll start to hear between those pitch changes. So because there's so much CV, the first thing that came to my mind was this would make a great CV-able slew. So let's use a sequence into exponential FM. So you can hear some notes are now stepping, others are slewing. And it's a nice effect. One other thing that we can do is to add resonance, which is going to add a kind of wobble into the sound. Because this will oscillate, remember. So without the sequence, this is just oscillating as an LFO. It's now oscillating as an LFO on top of the pitch sequence. So if I use a gate pattern to resonance, and I'm going to use this attenuator, turn up to the amount of wobble I want, and then use a gate to pull it back. A bit faster. You can hear these little wobbles coming in. So let's modulate exponential FM again. So I thought we'd just take a musical little FM break between the more in-depth patches. Now this is filter 8 oscillating, exponential FM from a sine wave, have a volt per octave signal into filter 8, a separate sequence into the modulating oscillator next to it, and I'm gating on and off the hold. Let's get rid of the reverb on it and the drums. And those little kind of clicky little pings on and off are the hold. If I remove that, and there's a ton of weight on those lower notes. Bit of reverb back on it. With a hold. Nice way to kind of play the sequence in and out. Drums back in. So here we're going to take a look at the resonating envelopes, a patch example that's in the manual. We can process an envelope through it, just as we have like the slew limiting. Go into the low range, bring the cutoff down. We've got that slew limiting. But we can superimpose resonance into the envelope at audio rates. For a kind of hairy audio rate modulation. This is modulating and opening a low pass gate and also modulating a wavetable. Just going to add some attack to this envelope. Go into the low mode. But there's this kind of wobble because it's oscillating or near oscillating with this high resonance. We're kind of pinging this LFO wobble and it's adding to the blue trace, which is the input, green trace is the output. And it adds a nice kind of wobble and shimmer, and it's a new shape and a new way to work with more basic envelopes. It adds a lot of scope to your modulation. Now, of course, we can modulate this, and we could turn on and off the wobble by modulating the resonance. Just bring this to a shorter gate pattern. And if I was to modulate cutoff, say with FM, let's just add resonance all the time. We can hear the rates changing, that wobble, that oscillating LFOs changing. Couple that with modulating resonance. We've quite a unique process to build in new responsive shaping to envelopes. You could put LFOs in and do the same thing, kind of impose this other LFO from the oscillating filter core over the top. Now, thanks for watching. Hit like, subscribe, go support me on Patreon if you'd like early access to content and bonus content. If that's not for you, share, like, all the usual kind of stuff. It's much appreciated. And check out the manual for the Filter 8. There's some great patch examples, a well-written manual going through what all this stuff is. Joranalogue have really pushed this idea of a filter, especially in 12 HP, way beyond a lot of other modules, and I think that's to be celebrated. Great sounding unit, lots of potential uses. Thanks for checking out this demo. Cheers.